spaceflight.
With the Delta II assignment close at hand, Zentran felt his allure for space travel return. Even the extended trip that had kept him away from Phora for so long hadn't dampened it. He hadn't seen Zach either since their graduation from instruction class. He was like a brother in a kindred spirit kind of way. Zentran felt apprehensive though in making his pre-flight preparations. His company owners relied on council permits to transport freight to and from planets within the Confederation. On this occasion, the council had imposed a condition. A council specialist in high integration navigational systems was to accompany his crew on this flight. Their purpose was to monitor and analyze the functionality of the onboard navigational computer. Zentran realized what was behind the function analysis. The navigational platform his freighter operated on was nowhere near the sophistication that the council representative's credentials boasted of. His ship's outdated system technology wasn't what the council wanted to investigate, or his training levels. His qualifications were more than adequate, and he welcomed the interaction. Concern lay elsewhere. Being a captain, as well as a gifted pilot, he often flew by the seat of his pants. It was not unusual for him to override the computer mentally to shorten a correction pattern when encountering asteroids. These override conditions would show up as system malfunctions should anyone have checked. They obviously had, and this was what they wanted to probe. Everything would have to be done by the book on this outing. He'd probably also have to entertain the council official on Delta II, which would be tedious. Being used to a Delta 4B existence, the official would find Delta II facilities fascinating. This would curtail visiting Zach. The council official hadn't arrived yet at departure countdown initiation. Zentran hoped he'd arrived too late, but unfortunately boarded just before auxiliary pressurization. Zentran busied himself with pre-flight checks. He instructed his flight lieutenant to show the official to the guest suite. Regrettably, this suite adjoined his. Zentran's instructions were simple.
See that the official is comfortable, but don't go overboard.
The lieutenant knew what that meant. He also held council officials in contempt.
One other thing, Lieutenant,
Zentran added.
Have a place set for him next to me in the dining room. Tell him we'll all meet for a meal and introductions at close of sequence.
Zentran unhurriedly completed his pre-flight routines. Powering the craft through Alpha 6's docking bay exit, anticipation of space exhilaration visited his senses. Having handed over to his lieutenant, he sat down in his quarters to an unfinished game of Quiven. There was no hurry to entertain the official. He could wait. The game consisted of warriors with different fighting skills in a three-dimensional hologram. Forward planning was required, as his opponent was the ship's computer. On his last long haul, he'd had plenty of time to devise the program. So, in effect, he was playing himself. He sought a variation to his usual style of play to test the program. The computer did nothing to intercept the move. It had seen through the ruse. He moved another piece, anticipating the computer's response. He had no desire to spend any more time with the council official than he absolutely had to. Making his way to the dining room, he prepared himself by donning a suitable blank stare. A thought of Phora crept into his mind. The notion brought a smile, which he quickly put aside, adopting the required expression. It would be some time before they'd be together again, and he missed her already. The crew rose as he entered the dining room. He walked towards his table and motioned them to be seated. At his table, he picked out the council official, and for a moment his step faltered. An observant eye would have noticed in that instant his blank stare wasn't blank. None of his crew noticed his lapse of composure, but the council official did. Arriving at his table, he didn't look at the official right away, waiting for the introduction. His lieutenant did the necessary.
Let me introduce you. This is our captain, Captain Zentran.
The lieutenant smiled. He knew it must come as some surprise to his captain that the council representative was a very attractive woman.
Please meet our council representative, communications official, Phora.
Zentran smiled politely, but didn't say anything. He sensed that his lieutenant hadn't finished. The lieutenant wondered if the council representative's appearance might influence his captain's indifference to council members. Even the austere council uniform couldn't conceal her well-proportioned figure. Whatever it was that the lieutenant had wanted to say didn't materialize. Compounding the moment were the similar events of their first meeting. Even his inner feelings were the same. It was as if Zentran was acting in a play, which of course was exactly what he was doing.
I'm pleased to make your acquaintance and have you on board, Miss Phora.
Zentran ventured as an understatement. Phora smiled.
Thank you, Captain. I am pleased to be here as well, in my capacity to serve the Council.
Her precautionary statement was for the benefit of the crew. In truth, she looked forward to seeing Zentran's surprise and to have the opportunity to share the trip with him. To assure Zentran's surprise, she'd practiced long and hard at withholding her presence. To her advantage was Zentran's distaste for council officials. Boarding at the last moment had helped. She'd almost blown it just before Zentran had entered the dining room. He'd thought of her then, but hadn't realized she was there. Food was served, and glancing around, Zentran noticed that other officers were just as impressed with the council official as his lieutenant.
I think I'm going to enjoy this trip after all.
Phora ignored the statement and continued to make small talk to the officers and captain for the rest of the meal. After dinner, she accompanied Zentran and the flight engineer to the navigation control room, where she examined computer flight logs. The flight engineer had no idea what she was looking for. Phora did, but would assure the source of what she'd been sent to investigate remained undisclosed. After a tour of the ship, they retired to their cabins. Zentran finally appreciated the advantage of the interlinking door between the captain's cabin and the guest suite. He'd never had cause or the pleasure to use it before. Phora had never experienced a live approach before. Through the flight room's observation port, Delta II showed up as a small sphere. She completed a program upgrade for the benefit of the crew and her report. Putting away her tools and test equipment, she sat back to watch the spectacle.
It's amazing how fast the planet grows in size. Almost frightening.
Yes, even though we haven't touched light speed. The distance between Delta 4b and Delta 2 doesn't require it.
Zentran paused, giving her time to appreciate the event.
Even at this speed, it's a breathtaking sight. We're cutting back now to allow for deceleration. The atmosphere is dangerous if we hit it too fast.
Zentran moved away from the controls and signaled to the lieutenant to take over.
Join me in the observation room, Miss Phora. You can get a better view of our approach from there.
Thank you, Captain. I'd like that.
They watched the planet grow in size. until it filled the entire window, and Zentran watched Phora take in the spectacle with all the wonderment of a little girl.